Hey everybody, this is Brother Kev. Today I wanted to talk to you about the systemic racism lie. Now, this is where a certain faction of the left has created this narrative where they want us to believe that there's a system of oppression in America today that is automatically put in place that disproportionately discriminates against black people because of the color of their skin. And they want us to believe that there's a concerted effort by law enforcement to target and indiscriminately hunt down and kill innocent black people. Now, first of all, the richest black people in the world live in the United States of America. If America is such a racist country, then how did Oprah Winfrey become a billionaire? If systemic racism is such a thing, then how did LeBron James make his millions? And you can't name one single opportunity in the United States that is being denied to black people today. Not one. There's not a single opportunity in this country that black people are being denied. As a matter of fact, black people actually have an advantage over everybody else in the United States because they have affirmative action laws where we can go and get hired on a job, not because we're qualified, but because of the color of our skin. We can get admitted into a college university, not because we passed some kind of an aptitude test and we deserve to be there, but because they got to fill a quota and we're accepted into that university solely based upon the color of our skin. So how can you say that systemic racism is a thing in America? And when you see these news stories about black people being shot and killed by police, 99.9% of the time, they were resisting arrest. They were not obeying the officer's commands. They had a gun pointed at the officer. They were charging at the officer with a knife. And nobody cares about the facts. They just start rioting and looting. And then when everything comes out, now look, I don't like to see anybody lose their life. But 9 times out of 10, what ends up happening is that we end up making martyrs out of criminals. Another thing, Americans despise racism. Okay, America is not a racist country. Americans cannot stand racism. How do I know that? Because we fought a civil war where over 600,000 Americans lost their lives. Thousands of white Republicans and good black people lost their lives because they were murdered and lynched by the Klan trying to end racism. Civil rights laws and legislation has been passed to make it illegal to discriminate against black people, against anybody based on the color of their skin. So how can you say that America is a racist country? What systemic racism says is that we've made no progress at all, that all those hundreds of thousands of people that died in the Civil War was meaningless. All those people that lost their lives at the hands of the Klan didn't mean anything. And apparently, they're not enforcing the civil rights laws that make it illegal to discriminate against somebody based on the color of their skin. So this whole systemic racism thing is a work of fiction. But let's talk about this a little bit more and let's find out what's really going on. Now, let me tell you what these people who are pushing this systemic racism narrative are not trying to do. This has nothing to do with justice. It has nothing to do with equality. This is not even about race. These people are not trying to fight racism. They are creating racism. Because when you are trying to fight against discrimination, you do not go around telling white people that they are born with privilege and that they are inherently born to be racist. You don't go around trying to indoctrinate people with the 1619 Project, which is basically a work of fiction which completely rewrites history. You don't go around trying to get people to sign on to the critical race theory, which basically blatantly discriminates against white people. These sorts of tactics do not solve discrimination. They do not cure problems. These things create more problems because they develop resentment in other people, because here you come telling somebody that they are inferior and that they have been born with some sort of mental defect. These people are not trying to solve problems. These people are creating more problems and division. And somebody please tell me, how do you solve systemic racism by defunding and abolishing the police? I mean, because what you're essentially saying is that everybody in law enforcement is a racist, which is the equivalent of saying that every black person is a criminal. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous the amount of damage and destruction the left is doing by going out and pushing this false narrative. I mean, Democrats have already decimated the black community. They've already destroyed black families. They've got us trapped in this endless cycle of government dependency, death and destruction, all this indiscriminate violence. Antifa and Black Lives Matter come along and they burn down the stores that we shop at. And then here you come and you want to get rid of the police. The only thing that is standing between an innocent citizen and a criminal. And what do you think has happened at these cities that have already put these insane policies into place where they're defunding and cutting back on the police and abolishing the police? Guess what happened? Crime skyrocketed. Murders skyrocketed. Robberies skyrocketed. Because you know why? That's what happens when you get rid of law enforcement and you leave a community full of lawless criminals. So these so-called solutions to end racism have actually made the lives of black people worse, because who do you think are the victims of all these crimes in these urban communities? Black people. Now remember, everything the left does is about power. The left doesn't solve problems. They actually make problems worse. They create more problems. This is how they're able to hold on to their power. They go out and accuse America of being a racist nation, and they're always out there chasing this elusive systemic racism. You know, I think systemic racism is more like a ghost in a horror movie that only a little child can see, and it only speaks to and communicates to the little child. Nobody else can see it, but the left says it's there, and it only communicates with the left. You know, they do this in order to keep black people voting for Democrats, to keep Democrats in power. Then once Democrats are in power, they forget about the black community and do nothing to improve the lives of the black community. And then the next election cycle rolls around and they start with the racial rhetoric and accusing everybody of being a racist again. They do this because it's a great way to distract America from looking at all the death and destruction that failed leftist policies have created in the black community over the past 40 to 50 years. And have you ever noticed when these cases go to court, when a police officer has shot or, God forbid, even killed a black person, you never see them being charged with a hate crime. And the reason you never see these officers being charged with that is because you have to be able to prove that this person shot and killed this other person because of the color of their skin. And that's impossible to do, because it's like you're saying that you can see what's inside this person's heart. And have you ever noticed how the left, they always claim to be fighting racism, but they never are able to solve it? And let me tell you why. Because racism has always existed. Racism has been around since mankind first began to interact with one another. Nobody in the history of the world has ever been able to solve racism, because racism is something that's in a person's heart. You can't tell a person, well, you have to like me because of the color of my skin. You can't tell a person to treat you a certain way because of the color of your skin. All we can do is create laws to make it illegal to discriminate against people against the color of their skin. See, here's the dirty little lie that the left will not tell you. They're always talking about problems that have always existed since the beginning of time. They're always presenting us with problems that can never be solved. They do this so that they can create government programs that can never be shut down, so that they can hire people who can never be fired, so that they can waste taxpayer money and steal taxpayer money that can never be traced or found, so they can retire with government benefits that can never be stopped. You know, in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11, it talks about how nobody knows anything about a man except the spirit of a man and God. In other words, nobody knows anything about you except you and God. Nobody can come along and tell you what's in your heart except you and God. Nobody can come along and tell you what motivates you to do what you do except you and God. That's why when you see these people going around making these broad, baseless accusations about all this widespread systemic racism, these people are literally trying to play God. What they're saying is that they can see inside your heart and see racism there, which is completely asinine and ridiculous. Nobody can tell you what's in your heart except you and God. And you know, the truth is, there are actually more false accusations of racism in the United States than actual cases of racism. We have come so far as a nation. There's so little racism in the United States that people have to go out and manufacture these elaborate race hoaxes. They have to manufacture these hate crimes just to try to fit into this America is a racist nation narrative. But you know, there's a danger in doing that, because when we go out and we make these false accusations about racism or anything else, we're actually speaking condemnation and judgment upon ourselves, because the word of God says the same way that we judge others is the same way that God judges us. The same measure that we dish out is the same measure that it comes back to us. So listen, I pray, beloved, that don't believe the propaganda, don't believe the hype. America is not a racist nation. I encourage you to go out and do your own research. Don't take my word for it. See, the left simply wants you to believe what they tell you. They don't want you to go out and actually discover the truth on your own. But as I always say, go out and do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Hey, listen, that's all Brother Kev has got for you today. I love you all. Keep the faith. Stay strong. Stay safe out there. God bless you. And remember, John chapter 8, verse 32, and you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free.